It was 1947. The war was over. Our boys had come home, and the greatest generation was begetting the baby boomers. Closer to home, there was a move afoot to erect a parking garage on Rittenhouse Square. The neighbors gathered together and said no. In that moment, CCRA was born.
After World War II, Center City was kind of in a state of flux, not unlike it is today. People were getting in their cars and moving out to the burbs. CCRA came into being because of the people who stayed behind and didn't run. Those are the people who really got together and decided that if we're going to live here, it's got to get better. 1947 was the beginning of a plan to build a garage underneath Rittenhouse Square, which had meant tearing up the entire square. It meant bulldozing all the trees and digging and all the things that go with it. And what happened was hundreds and hundreds of letters and protests. It was really quite the cause célèbre that happened. CCRA, this little band of people, of urbanites, really prevailed. And they did manage to save a great treasure of the city. It was just urban people digging in their heels and saying, no, you're not going to do this. We're going to save this part of the city. And they have, and it's a gem. Philadelphia is a historic city, and we cherish that in this end of town.
For CCRA, preserving Rittenhouse Square led naturally to the preservation of historic neighborhoods.
All the high-rises that are there today were not yet there in the early 1950s. So the historic preservation efforts were more focused on preserving the square and preserving the blocks and what was around the square. In the 80s, they had most of the area that was part of the CCRA footprint designated as a historic district. And that's the kind of thing that CCRA continues to be very involved in. Development and development pressures are really one of the biggest threats to historic preservation.
Center City Residents Association has taken the lead in creating community stakeholder groups to work with developers on their projects, to make sure that their projects not only respect the historic character, but also to deal with more mundane issues like trash and loading and traffic and drop-offs. In 1982, a developer proposed demolishing the historic Yonwell Mansion at 17th and Locust Streets to build a 15-story office building at that corner. And so the Rittenhouse Square community banded together, in part through CCRA, and were able to block the construction of the tower and preserve the Arnold Mansion, which is still standing to this day.
It took more than historic preservation to make Center City West as livable as it is. For CCRA, it also meant good schools.
In the 40s and 50s, there was no public school in Center City, Philadelphia. And a bunch of parents got together, got CCRA involved, and they went to the Board of Education and said, hey, we need a public school here in Center City. And that was the start of the Greenfield School. It was opened in 1960 at the YWCA building at 2027 Chestnut Street. The school became popular, and in about 1963, it moved to the Gerald Electronics building at 23rd and Chestnut. And about 6 years later, a decision was made to acquire the property at 22nd and Chestnut. The school opened in September of 1970. It has been a terrific asset for the community ever since. So we've all been very proud of it. CCRA has supported it, and CCRA was very instrumental in its coming about.
When it came to quality of life, for CCRA, it was a short leap from creating good schools to creating Schuylkill Gardens and the Schuylkill River Trail.
Around 1982, a group of neighbors in the Fittler Square area were very interested in finding some land to start a community garden. The city was acquiring this industrial land at 25th and Locust, So we seized on that opportunity to turn what was an industrial dump into a green and productive garden. The city eventually leased the land to CCRA, who in turn arranged to parcel out plots and collect fees and remit them as rent. There are roughly 75 plots, a 2-year waiting list to get into the garden. It did turn out to be a really beautiful spot, and it continues to be.
So Schuylkill River Park was an idea that has a very long history, but modern day, 1960, Ed Bacon puts it on the comprehensive city plan. It was a great idea, but there was no money to fund it. In 1989 or so, I was looking for another project, and the idea of creating a river park seemed to be a very exciting idea. So I got together a group of friends and neighbors. Writer from the Inquirer, Terry Samuels, wrote a story, Dream Revived for River Park. And lo and behold, that was something that excited the Pew Charitable Trust. Some months later, we got the grant, and then after that, we got a similar grant from the William Penn Foundation, and we were off and running. The CCRA has been a great partner to making this an important part of the Center City experience.
Among other things, quality of urban life means clean sidewalks. CCRA took it upon themselves to make that happen.
The Sidewalk Cleaning campaign came to be when a few members years ago contacted CCRA in regards to trying to keep the streets clean after sanitation crews come through the city. The board put their heads together to see what they can come up with, so they contacted the Center City District.
We began a discussion about structuring a fee-for-service arrangement where our crews would come into the Center City residence neighborhood area and clean largely on the day of or day after municipal trash pickup. That whole crew, which we call our fee-for-service crew, are people who were formerly homeless or were returning citizens, so we created a program really that was a second chance opportunity.
We couldn't figure out a way how to pay this, so what we did was we have a fall campaign and a spring campaign in which we raised an average of $25,000 a year to pay for our sidewalk cleaning.
The city trash does not get everything. They get anywhere from 50 to 75% and leave the rest. Prior to CCRA, I was picking it up, our dishwashers were picking it up, and now CCRA cleans it up for us, and they do a great job of it too.
We take pride in something like this. It keeps our members happy, it keeps the city happy, keeps the tourists that go through the areas to look at the historic buildings happy. We are very happy with this.
From historic preservation to schools to the Schuylkill and to the sidewalks, CCRA is there for you.